So I was glad when I was told that I could take whatever approach that I wanted with this word. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about investing from a different angle. But first, one of the things I found when I looked at some previous speakers, for Creative Mornings, you guys have had artists that have been on here, and typically what they do is they'll show you images of their work, right? Some of their best work, the kind of art they like to do. I think it's a way that they let you in, right? And so I was like, you know what, I want to do the same thing. I think I'm an artist as well. So is it okay if I share with you guys some of my best work?
Yeah.
All right. Best piece of art that I have. This. Asking this woman to marry me. Best thing that I did. Next thing, getting married. I promise this wasn't my slideshow before she said she was going to be here. Getting married to her. I mean, that is my beauty right there. Guarantee you, if my team hadn't brought me down to earth with that dreamy thing, guarantee you she would have brought me down to earth when I brought it back home. Next thing, our children. So these are our beautiful kids. Antonio's 20, Ashton is 16, Anaya is 14, Saray is 11, and little Benicio is 3. So this is my best work, folks. Wanted to share that with you. The other thing is, I heard a pastor once say that if I show you pictures of my family, you'll listen more. So this is kind of a double-edged sword here. So let's get back to investing. When you think about investing, you think about this guy, right? Who is he? Warren Buffett, arguably probably the most successful investor. Somebody who knows more or better can correct me if I'm wrong. But the angle that I want to take on investment is a quote that he actually said, which is, the best investment you can make is an investment in yourself. And so that's the approach that I want to take today as we talk about investing, because I feel like investing is such an important part of the roles that we play in the lives that we live on a day-to-day basis. But before we get into that, I want to set just some foundational beliefs that I have that have led me to how I want to talk about investing today. All right? First thing, you are your biggest asset, right? I think Warren Buffett says the exact same thing. You are your biggest asset. Number 2, we all lead and influence. Whether we like it or not, we all lead and influence. 3, we all have the potential and the responsibility for impact. I'll say that again. We have the potential and the responsibility for impact, whether that's impacting the people around us, the community, the world, whatever that might be, we have a responsibility. And then finally, most people go through life using a very small part of their potential. Just a small part of their potential. So, quick question. How many people in here have goals or dreams that they're hoping to accomplish at some point? Most people. Another question. If you had your life to live it over, how many people believe that they would do more than they've done to this point where you're at today, if you had your life to do it over? That speaks to the potential that we have that we don't completely tap into. And I believe that investing in ourselves is a big part of that. As we invest in ourselves, we tap into greater portions of our potential that allow us to do more and have more impact. So these beliefs that I have, I didn't always have. I didn't always believe that I had the power to influence, the power to impact those around me, the power to lead. Partly because the image that I had of somebody that can influence, I did not match that image that I had in my head. Okay? But today I want to share my story about how others investing in me and how me investing in myself helped change that paradigm that allowed me to believe that I have the opportunity, the impact, the responsibility to impact and influence others. So like I said, the image that I had in my head was, I just did not match that. Partly because when I thought about influence and impact, people that I saw the image that I saw was somebody that is strong and bold, charismatic, I don't know, all the words of what a typical leader or influencer might look like. But that wasn't me. This was me. This was not 7th grade. This was my senior year in high school. I probably weighed 100 pounds, soaking wet with 5 sets of clothes on. Like, I was tiny. So I was the little person in the room. I was the smallest person in my class, smallest in total. So the girls and the guys, my little brother and little sister at one point were both taller and bigger than I was. So I was the middle kid. So everything was putting me in the corner in a sense, right? So I just felt like, you know what, I'll just be over here in the corner. I'll let y'all that do the influencing and the impacting go do your thing. I'm not going to get in the way. So this was my story. But my story changed, right? So I wanted to share, starting from actually when I came here to the U.S. I'm from Nigeria originally. I went to Calvin. When I graduated from Calvin, economy was taking a turn, and I was a graphic design and marketing major. But I knew I was going to find a job in graphic design and marketing. So I was like, you know what? To ride this bad economy wave, I'll go get a job at the bank. Ride the bad economy wave, a couple of years, get out of it, get into some design work, and this will be fun. Well, got into banking, and turns out I did it well. I got in part-time. I was a top salesperson in the branches, outselling everybody full-time. My supervisor I was outselling her. And so I got approached to get into the manager training program. So I'm like, sweet, let's do it. You know, it's more money, more opportunity. And so it was opportunity for me to learn. The bank invested in me, and I was able to learn and grow. And so my banking career, the first couple of years as a manager, I still hadn't embraced the reality of being somebody that could influence or lead. But I was motivated by my check, because you sell, you get a bigger check. So I was like, cool, we can do that. Well, the first step in the change that happened to me was about 5 years into my banking career. Everything is going well. My branch is doing awesome. We're leading the district in sales at this point in time. And I started getting this vision that just didn't make any sense to me. The first time it happened, it just kind of freaked me out. I was like, okay, cool, bad dream, leave it alone. But it kept coming. I was seeing it more at night. I was seeing it during the day. I'm like, what the heck is up with this vision? But I had no idea what to do with it or who to talk to about it. So I'll pause the story there, and I'll fast forward 5 years forward. So now the next 5 years in my banking career, I didn't feel fulfilled. I was just kind of going through the motions. I was still doing fairly well. I kept on saying that, oh, in 5 years I'm going to get out of banking. In 3 years I'm going to get out of banking. In a year I'm going to get out of banking, but never actually took the steps to move. The way I like to tell the story is I had short-term amnesia on the 1st and 15th of every month. I get my check, I'm like, this ain't so bad. I can do this for a couple more years. Well, five years after that vision, I lost my job. No warning, I just lost the job. And so I remember kind of thinking about the ride home, like, man, I got to call my wife and let her know. You know, I was concerned about how she would react to me not having a job, being the primary breadwinner in the home. And I gave her a call, and I'm like, hey, babe, I just lost my job. I don't know, what to do. And her response was, well, you didn't want that anyway. You wanted something different, so I guess this is your time to get out. So stress level goes from here to here. I'm like, all right, cool, we're good. So this began a time of kind of like soul searching. Okay, Attah, what is next for you? I just knew I didn't want to go into banking, but I didn't know what industry, what I wanted to do, what kind of impact I wanted to have. In fact, I wasn't even thinking about impact. I just wanted another job. And so I thought I'd find a job really easily. I had some big banks on my resume, successful career, master's degree, but the job didn't come as quickly as I thought. 3 months in, still no job. And so at this time, I'm really trying to learn some things. And so I remember watching some videos of some speakers, and I saw a video from Jim Rohn, who's a well-known speaker. And one of the things he said was, we don't get paid per hour. We get paid for the value we bring to an hour. So what you need to do is increase your value. So I'm like, oh, okay. So at this point, I started reading, get into reading more. There's some books I started, 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, As a Man Thinketh, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, all these books that I'm just kind of pouring into myself, trying to see, okay, what can I do? How can I invest in myself and increase my value? Another thing happened in that time. We were going to a concert in Detroit. So my wife and I and my pastor and his wife going to a concert in Detroit. And as we're driving into Detroit, there's a billboard on the side of the road that I see. And it was a billboard for university. I have no clue what the university was, but it stuck out to me. On the billboard, it was silhouettes of people. Silhouettes of people that, just by their silhouette, you could tell who they were. Now, you're famous if all we need is your silhouette to know exactly who it is. But it was people like, I don't know, Gandhi and MLK and Steve Jobs or whoever. And the billboard just read, "What does your greatness look like?" And so I'm like, man, it just kind of struck me in a different kind of way. And I'm like, okay, these are people from different walks of life, different socioeconomic levels. But one thing that was the same for all of them was the impact that they had in their sphere of influence. And they were able to have that impact because of the investment that had been made in them, whether it was by others or by themselves. And so I started to ask that question for myself, well, what is your level of greatness? And then at the same time, there's a verse that I saw, Proverbs 18:16, that said, "A man's gift makes a way for him, makes room for him, and puts him before a great man." And I was like, okay, well, what's my gift? What does my greatness look like? So all these questions are running in my head. So I'm going to pause the story there and go back 5 years prior to this vision that was kind of like just shaking me. And the vision was of me speaking to like a sea of people. I mean, just thousands of people as far as the eye could see. And it freaked me out because I was deathly afraid of being in front of people. And I was like, this doesn't even make sense. And I had no idea who to talk to about it to make sense of it. I'm a mama's boy, unashamedly, but I lost my mom in 2000, actually 20 years to the day. I lost my mom, and so typically I would have probably called my mom and said, "Mom, help me understand this thing." So I did the next best thing. I called a woman that I went to church with who had kind of adopted me as a mom, who had been pouring into me in various ways, and I said, "Hey, Mama, there's this vision I keep getting that is freaking me out, and it doesn't make any sense to me, but I can't shake it. It keeps coming back and coming back and coming back." And so I shared it with her, and she said, "You know what, Attah? I think that's a vision of impact." And she's like, in a way that I think any loving mother would do. She said, "You know what? I think it's a vision of impact. When we think about impact, we think about the big people that make huge impact. The MLKs, who made impact that changes the history of a nation. The Bill Gates or the Steve Jobs or star athletes or whatever you want to call them. And we think about that kind of impact." She said, "But we neglect the people that influence them. We forget about the Sunday school teacher or the friend that influenced an MLK to have that dream, or a friend or the person that they saw somewhere else that caused them to want to get into the tech space to do whatever it is that they do." So she said, we can't all be MLKs and Steve Jobs or whatever, but we can be that person that influences them. And so I was like, okay. It gave me a different perspective of how then to live. And so it made me realize that no matter what you're doing, there's people watching, and you are influencing people, whether you choose to do it intentionally or not. And so the question becomes, will you choose to accept that responsibility that is on your shoulders just because you happen to be the 1 in 4 trillion people that gets to be alive, right? So how does your investment in yourself or allowing others to invest in you change that ripple effect that you then have by investing? So this was something that I thought was just extremely interesting, but then it also reminded me that there is another side to that coin as well. So for everybody that you can influence in a positive way, it's possible to influence in a negative way, right? I think of who are the people that influence, like the Hitlers or the, you name it, out there. And so how do the things that we do influence others? And so the way that we can then affect that is how we pour into ourselves. How are we pouring into ourselves to invest in ourselves to make us examples that people can look to have the impact that they will have moving forward? So there's 4 things that I want to kind of just drop in as far as the story is concerned. Number 1, you want to engage in an ongoing process of developing you. Because as you develop you, it allows you to influence others in a positive way. Those that are watching, those that are just happen to be kind of just in your life. Second thing, intentionally invest in others. Now, why is this important? I believe if you're intentional about investing in others, it kind of ignites a desire in you to pour into yourself. Because you know that for you to show up in a way that pours into somebody else, you have to have something in you, right? It's like the saying, you can't pour out of an empty cup. So how are you intentionally choosing to invest in others? The third thing, manage your inner dialogue. very easily, we always say these types of things, right? I'm useless, I'm hopeless, I'm a failure, I'm too old, not good enough, I suck. What if? My inner story early on in my life gave me permission to sit on the sidelines because I said, hey, that's not me. So because it's not me, I don't have to do anything in the game, right? So how are we managing that inner dialogue? How are we saying yes to ourselves? MIT did a study at one point that said, every time you hear a no, it takes 16 yeses to counteract that no. And it's on the 17th yes that you actually believe the yes. So how do we say yes to ourselves and give us the motivation to move forward in whatever it is, vision, dream, goal that we're trying to pursue? And then finally, develop a sense of urgency. That clock was a clock that I saw when I was with my daughter in DC at a museum. And it just arrested me. Just watching time tick. It's not waiting for you. It's going to keep ticking. So how do you create that sense of urgency to act? Create that sense of urgency to act. Far too often, the two biggest excuses we hear from people are, I'm too young, or I'm too old. So I'm too young, so I can't do that right now. A couple years pass, well, I'm too old, so I guess I gotta leave that alone. So how are you developing a sense of urgency to act? Because you have a responsibility for impact. And so how are you choosing to invest in yourself? Who are the people you're putting around you? What are the books that you're reading? Are there pieces of art that haven't been created because you haven't chosen to invest in yourself? Who are the people that are missing out because we aren't choosing to invest in ourselves? So I just want to say, don't wait. Invest in yourself today because somebody is watching. Thank you.
Do we have any questions?
So I was just wondering if you could share a little bit more since, leaving the banking field and all of the things that you're doing right now, how did that kind of come to fruition in going from that place to where you are now?